The sound of splintering wood shouldn't be the first thing a man hears before breakfast. Yet that was exactly what I heard the morning everything started to fall apart. And if you'd told me then that a single woman armed with nothing more than a shiny SUV and a crown made of HOA arrogance would drag me into the nastiest war of my life, I would have laughed. But that laugh wouldn't last long. Because before this was over, she'd rammed my gate, ruined my peace, dragged me into court, and forced me to build something I never thought I'd need, a trap built out of steel spite and a man's last shred of patience. I bought my ranch because I wanted quiet. I'd spent 30 years on construction sites breathing dust, dealing with foremen who thought they were gods, HOA reps who acted like they controlled the color of the sky. When I finally paid off this land, my land, I thought I'd left all that behind. I imagined sunrises over open fields, a wooden gate I built with my own hands swinging shut each night, the kind of silence that sits easy on your shoulders. Peace. That's all I wanted. I'd been on the ranch maybe 3 weeks when I met her. Karen. Perfect blonde bob sunglasses big enough to hide half her face, a crisp white SUV that looked like it had never even seen rain. She slowed near my driveway, rolled the window halfway down, and flashed a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Lovely place," she said. And before I could even say thank you, she drove straight through my closed gate, snapped the hinges, dragged it across the gravel like it was a welcome mat. Then she waved in her rearview mirror like she'd done me a favor. I just stood there dumbfounded. Maybe she was lost, I thought. Maybe GPS told her my ranch was a shortcut. But the way she smirked as she sped off? No, that wasn't confusion. That was entitlement. That was a challenge. I spent that evening fixing the gate, resetting posts, reinforcing hinges, muttering under my breath. I tried to brush it off, first impressions and all, but a week later I heard the rumble of her SUV again. This time she didn't even slow down. She blasted through the gate like she was storming a castle. Splinters everywhere, dust blowing across my porch like a sandstorm. I ran out waving my arms. "Hey, that's private property." She leaned out her window just long enough to shout, "Community easement." Then she disappeared down my pasture like it belonged to her. Community easement. I knew my deed backward and forward. There was no easement, no shared road, no right of way. But she said it like God himself had handed her a stone tablet engraved with that phrase. That night I went into town for supplies, and the old-timers shook their heads when I mentioned her. "She runs the HOA like a kingdom," one said. "Folks been fighting her for years," the other added. "Best let her be. Best let her be." They said it like she was a tornado you learned to live with. But I wasn't built that way. The third time she hit my gate, I caught her in the act. I came around the corner just as she revved her SUV in front of my freshly repaired entrance. She saw me, smirked, and said, "You really ought to keep this open. It saves me 10 minutes every morning." "This isn't your road," I snapped. "This is my property. You're trespassing." She lifted her chin. "You're new here. The HOA sets the rules around this community. You're not above them." That was the first time she said HOA like it was a divine throne she sat on. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't going to stop. Not with logic, not with politeness, not even with the law, not when she acted like she was the law. I fixed the gate again, but something had changed. Every nail felt heavier. Every board I replaced felt like another line she'd crossed. And it didn't take long for her little army to join in. Soon I had other HOA board members driving through my land like it was their new freeway. SUVs, minivans, sedans waving to each other as if my property was a scenic route designed for their convenience. One afternoon I found an envelope in my mailbox stamped with official HOA letterhead. A violation notice. Me. Violating their rules. They demanded I remove my unsightly ranch gate, the one they kept destroying. I laughed so hard I nearly choked. I wasn't even in their damn HOA. But a laugh doesn't mean you're not tired. And truth be told, that night I felt something heavier than anger, something close to defeat. I sat on my porch, hands dirty from another repair, staring at the horizon, wondering if maybe I was the problem. Maybe I should have just left the gate open. Maybe I should have moved. Maybe peace wasn't meant for me. That thought sat in my chest like a stone. But then I remembered why I bought this land. I remembered the decades I worked to afford it. And I remembered the look on Karen's face, the smug tilt of her chin, the certainty that I'd fold. And I felt something shift, something anchor itself deep inside me. No, I wasn't wrong. I wasn't crazy. And I sure as hell wasn't giving up. Over the next weeks, things escalated fast. At midnight, I'd hear the roar of engines and the crack of wood breaking again. I'd run outside with a flashlight only to see Karen's taillights fading into the darkness. The sheriff shrugged when I reported it. Without proof, it's your word against hers. You know how much influence she's got. Influence. That was the problem. She had it. I didn't. And every time she flattened that gate, she took a piece of my sanity with it. One Sunday morning, I blocked the gate with my old Chevy pickup and waited. She came barreling over the hill, slammed on her brakes, and leaned out the window like she was about to scold a child. "Move your truck," she demanded. "No," I said. "This road is mine." She smirked, always that damn smirk. "You can't own a road that blocks community access. It's against the law." Against the law. She said it so confidently that for a brief second, even knowing the deed was mine, I wondered if she was right. That's the thing about people like her. They make you doubt what you know, twist the truth until it cracks. But doubt or no doubt, I didn't move. And after a minute-long staring contest, she finally backed up and sped off. For a moment, I thought I'd won. The next day, I came home to find the gate flat on the ground again. Posts ripped clean out of the dirt. Tire tracks slicing across my pasture. That's when the exhaustion hit. Not just physical, but bone-deep, soul-deep. I started thinking maybe the old-timers were right. Maybe the storm was too big. Maybe I should have given in. But then somewhere between fury and exhaustion, I found a different kind of resolve. A colder one. A sharper one. I was done repairing. I was going to build something she couldn't break. What I built wasn't just a gate. It was a message written in steel. Beneath the cedar planks, I welded industrial-grade beams, reinforced hinges, steel posts sunk deep into concrete. And beyond the gate, just out of sight, I dug shallow trenches filled with tire-shredding spikes hidden beneath fresh gravel. A wolf in sheep's clothing. Karen watched me from her SUV, sometimes recording on her phone like she was building a case. But I kept working quiet, steady, relentless. My buddy Hank stopped by one evening, watched me weld through the twilight, and said, "You're playing with fire." I wiped sweat from my brow and said, "Then I'll make sure it burns the right person." 5 days later, the trap was ready. And on a bright Saturday afternoon, Karen finally came. She sped toward the gate with 2 HOA board members trailing behind her like loyal soldiers. She didn't slow. She didn't hesitate. She went full throttle because in her mind she'd already won. But the gate didn't move. The moment her bumper hit, the whole SUV screamed. Metal against metal, airbags exploding, the front end crumpling like a soda can. Her rear tires rolled over the hidden spikes, pop, 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 until the whole vehicle sagged forward, defeated. Dust settled. The world went quiet. Then the screaming started. She stumbled out of the SUV, furious, humiliated, pointing at me as if I'd attacked her family. "What have you done?" she shrieked. I walked down my porch steps, slow, steady. "I stopped you from trespassing." Neighbors were gathering now, phones out recording. The HOA treasurer crawled out of a ditch. Another board member hid his face. Karen's rage only made it worse for her. The sheriff arrived. Karen ran to him, sobbing, pointing at the ruined SUV. "He set a trap. He tried to kill me." The sheriff turned to me. "That true?" "No," I said, calm as stone. "It's a private gate on private property. And I've got cameras." I pointed to the posts. Little red lights blinked back. Her face drained of color. The sheriff sighed, took off his hat, and said, "Ma'am, looks like you've got some explaining to do." And just like that, the queen lost her crown. Court came next. Karen strutted in like she still owned the world, but the footage told a different story. The judge watched clip after clip, her smashing through my gate, yelling about community spirit, dragging her board members into her madness. And when her lawyer tried to paint me as some unhinged hermit with a vendetta, Martha, my attorney, clicked her remote and played the final clip. The SUV hitting the steel, the spikes shredding the tires, the neighbors laughing. The judge leaned back and said, "Case dismissed. And Mrs. Karen, you and your HOA owe this man damages." It was over. The room buzzed with whispers. Karen stared ahead, stunned like someone had unplugged her. Her reign ended right there in that quiet courtroom. And that was enough for me. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with fists or guns, they're fought with boundaries and the courage to defend them.